Classic Game Podcast, and I'm your host, James Roberts. Before we get started with this week's show, first off, let me take this opportunity to welcome back the regular listeners. And if this is your first time listening to the show, I hope you enjoy this episode and decide to subscribe to the show. And today's guest, I've got Alex Owumi. He's a professional basketball player and the author of Gaddafi's Point Guard. So thanks again, Alex, for coming on the show.
How you doing? Thanks for having me, James.
So we touched upon it a little bit off air. Can you describe to the listeners how you got into basketball in the first place?
Well, when I was a kid, born and raised in Nigeria, my dad always used to go to the States and bring over these VHS tapes of these vintage basketball players, Earl Monroe, Michael Jordan, Larry Bird, things like that. And first, my brothers took a liking to it. And I always said that, whatever my brothers did, I would do. If they played golf, if they were pilots, I would do the same thing. But their love was basketball. They took a liking to it, and they brought me to it. And that's just how it got started. I was just following their lead, and I ended up falling in love with it. Took it real serious as I got older, around age 9, 10, 11. I knew I could actually, be really good at this because my drive.
Okay. And progressing from obviously high school, where did you go to college to play basketball?
After I left high school, I was also an American football player, a very good one. So I went to Georgetown to play two sports, basketball and football. I was there for almost a year and a half, and then I left, and I ended up finishing at a school called Alcorn State University in Mississippi for my last 2 years in college. And it was a rough road for me, but I would do it all over again, to be honest with you, because I met a lot of great people along the way, and I learned a lot. But even when I was in college, I knew for a fact that I wanted to do this thing professionally. It wasn't a doubt about that. I worked hard at it. I was also a good student. I knew I needed my academics, past basketball, and that was important to me also. But as far as professionally, I knew that I wanted to play for a long time if I could take care of my body and study the game and work hard.
And you say you were a good student and having basketball at the same time. Can you explain to the listeners how that system works in the US in terms of both high school and university in terms of eligibility?
Oh, yeah, the eligibility is, listen, if you don't go to class or you don't do the work, you don't play. I think you have to have a certain, we call it GPA, grade point average, in America. And you have to be an above average student to actually participate in sports. When you get to the university level, again, you have to be above average. And you just got to put in the work. You spend about 5 or 6 hours, maybe 5 hours a day on your athletics. Well, you spend a lot. You spend, I think, almost double that on your academics. A lot of kids don't understand that because they think, oh, I just got the scholarship, I'm going to school for free. No, you actually have to put in the work to be eligible. I think the GPA in the U.S. for university, I think it's probably like a 2.5, which is above average. People might say, oh, that's low, but, universities are actually pretty difficult. Not only in America, but, all over the world. But, kids put in the work, and, a lot of these superstars you see these days, Kevin Durant, all these guys, they put in the work in the classroom to be eligible to play in the university experience. So, there's no easy way to go about it.
And coming back on the education point, what did you study at university?
My first year when I was at Georgetown, I was pre-med, I'm not going to say it was very difficult because, I'm a kid that's always in the library. I lived in a library. Our library was 24 hours. I had a pillow there, a blanket. I literally was living there, getting up, going to class the next day. But I wanted to, I loved it because that's something my parents wanted me to do, and I wanted to follow my father's footsteps. But my real passion was writing, and so I switched to my major to journalism, broadcast journalism. And I knew that would help me translate to my life after basketball, and it ended up helping my life during basketball also. But that was just my passion. I always wanted to be a writer. I wanted to write novels. I wanted to, write movie scripts and things like that because I had a different type of imagination as a child, and I knew that could bring the best out of me.
Okay, that's quite interesting. Obviously, pretty well balancing any degree and doing sport at the same time is quite difficult. But when you said pre-med, I'm thinking those
Yeah.
those things are difficult enough by themselves.
Yeah, it was a lot, but I'm a true believer that you make time for whatever's important. You make time for people that are important and things that are important in your life. I played two sports and I was pre-med, biology, biochemistry, and with that you got to go to labs, you got to do extra research. But I think 24 hours in a day is a lot. When you categorize what you're doing within a day. But I had no problem with it. I just think for my life and what I wanted to do in my 30s, 40s, and 50s, 60s, I knew that writing will be what will make me happy, and I could do more things with that. And it's just what I believe in, to be honest with you. So I'm happy I took that route.
And then it was I was discussing with a psychologist on a previous podcast. He was saying that athletes are in a good position to be able to balance their lives more so than other individuals because obviously we have to structure our day around, obviously we know that we're gonna have to train X amount during the day, so we are kind of better at time management in terms of getting things done. So coming to my point on that, did you find as an athlete that you were and at university at the time you were able to better time manage your time to get things done, be it the hours in the library, having to go to class, and then also you've got to set that, well, I won't say set aside time to go to practice. You had set times that you had to go to practice.
Yeah.
Did you find that it helped you in the long run having to balance those two? What would I say it? Two tasks at university.
Yeah, I mean, of course. As I get older now, I look back and my schedule, my structure I had when I was 18 and 19, it is basically still the same thing. Like I have to carve out a certain time to write. I have a set schedule here for practice and training, but I also have a set schedule where I do work on my own as far as getting in the gym, going, getting extra shots up and things like that. It's the same thing we did when I was in college. Well, you guys call it university. Same exact thing. And I think that athletes, it actually helps you to structure your life even after basketball, because you're always on a schedule. You always have to put things that are important as a top priority. And then when you leave time for friends, family, your teammates and things like that. And I just think it's a great system to have. I think a lot of athletes need to understand that the structure that you have when you're 18 or 19 as far as university and where you have to be, it's going to help you when 40, 50 when you're done with athletics. So, I mean, we really need to teach these kids that and take that into consideration.
Well, to kind of go on more on from that point, it's probably a lot easier. They've got no excuse, the kids nowadays, because you've got your smartphones, your tablets. Yeah. They've all got calendars on it, so you're carrying around your calendar, so you've got no excuse to be able to time manage now. Whereas probably when we were younger, it'd be a case of using an actual real life calendar, and it would be somewhere in the house, and you'd have to memorize that.
I remember walking around and when I was in high school with a calendar in my bag and having to write things in there, because those cell phones back in those days didn't have. You couldn't set a reminder. Like now, you could set a reminder for a whole week, and like it could just go off, and you're like, oh, I gotta do this, I gotta do that. I literally, if I didn't have that calendar with me, I was screwed. Like because I had so many things going on. I had to be to class at this time. I had to be at practice at this time. I had a team meeting, film. I had to eat. Like, sometimes I forgot to eat. That was my big problem when I was 18, 19 years old. I would literally skip meals because I was always in the library studying something, and I would snack at like 11 when I had to take like these Tupperwares of Nutri-Grain bars and sandwiches I used to have to make because I would forget I had to eat. And playing a high level sport and the level I played in, it takes a toll on your body, not only physically but mentally. So mentally, you have to have your mind right.
And then going on to the past university now and using basketball as a career, where are some of the places that you've had the experience to play in?
I played in a lot of places. I played in Macedonia, France. I've played in Egypt, Libya, and I've been here in England in the British Basketball League. This is my 5th year. I've also played in the U.S. minor leagues. But this has been a long journey, to be honest with you. I played in a lot of great places, but I'm at a point in my life, in my professional life now, where I'm actually happy with the way my career turned out. And I'm 32 years old now, but I'm still healthy. I still feel good. I still take care of my body, and I still play at a high level. And I take a lot of pride in saying that because I put in a lot of work when I was younger, and I put in a lot of work now.
And then listening to a previous podcast that you did, you said when you had your misfortune or how would I put it in a non-PC way? You were talking about your experience of playing in Macedonia and the trials and tribulations, what came with that. Can you explain to the listeners what some of those were?
When I played in Macedonia, I don't want anybody to get the wrong idea. I believe that it's a great country. Eastern Europe is a great region of the world. But my experience in the city I was living in, which was Skopje, which was which is the capital of the country. I lived in a small part of that main city where it was filled with a lot of people who wouldn't see black people on a regular basis. Maybe on TV, like obviously on TV, and they hear the music. So it's like once I got there and they saw me, it was like I was like a walking billboard. I'm this athlete with tattoos. Does he rap? Does he sing? Is he like, what I mean? It's like the black people I see on TV, and that wasn't the case. I was just a athlete. I was a quiet kid. I was a kid who was there to do a job, and I wanted to take an experience. And I was obviously I was welcomed by my team very well, but as far as the community, as far as the Rhode fans, they didn't welcome me and my other teammates that were African American. It wasn't a warm welcome. It was a very stressful situation. The league was great. I'm not gonna lie. The league and the competition, basketball was great, things like that. But as far as being welcome as individuals, it was rough. It was really rough. It was a very hostile work environment. And things got pretty bad. Like I said, they're not used to seeing black people a lot. So there were things that they were saying, racial slurs that I wasn't, and my teammates weren't comfortable with. And for you to tell somebody to be there for 9 months and taking type of abuse, verbal abuse, something bad would have happened. And before that could have happened, I had to get up out of there. That's basically what went down.
And that's probably, as you attest to in the other podcast, that's kind of, was it the final straw to make you want to leave and take other opportunities elsewhere?
Yeah, that was the final straw. I knew for a fact that when I was 18 years old, my goal in life was if I could play 10 years professionally on any level, I would be happy. Like 10, if I could do 10, my goal was to do 10, boom. If I go past that, that's great. I just knew I wanted to be in a positive work environment. The money's good. You get a chance to do something that million people would do for free, right? You know, if I wasn't playing professionally, I'd probably play in some gym back home, same type of competition, yelling, playing physical. But I get paid to do this, so I'm happy. But my main goal was to be in a positive work environment, and once it wasn't positive, I had to go seek that somewhere elsewhere, whether it could be Asia, Africa, the U.S., and that was my main concern because when I'm stressed out, I still can play well, but I get a little bit. It's a different type of basketball. You know, if I'm in a positive work environment, I would love getting up, going to work, going to the gym, looking at my teammates. When it's not like that, I might hear my alarm clock and just start going crazy. You know, might not want to show up. So I just didn't want that for my life. So I had to find a positive work environment, and that's basically what I did.
And then from that, how did the opportunity of going to play in Libya come about?
Well, the situation in Libya came about. My agent at the time, he actually was from Macedonia, so I had easy access to him. And I basically told him, called him one day, I said, I need to get out of here. And he understood the situation because my other teammates were trickling out. Everybody wanted to get out of there. And he told me there's a team in Libya that knows you're available. They want you. They're going to pay you X amount of dollars. You know, it was a decent amount of money. He's like, you have an African passport, obviously, but you know it's a different type of country. It's quiet. That's what actually what he said. He said it's quiet. The league is very physical, but I think you'll do well there. Said that the league was over in June. You know, things like that. So I was like, anything, just get me out of here. Like, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Just get me out of here. So that's how that came about. So I got out of there in Macedonia. Literally, I think probably 3 days later, signed my contract, and I was on the road to Libya.
And you talked a little bit about it on that other podcast about friends and family raised concerns about you going.
Yeah. My parents, obviously, my brothers and sisters, they always do the research. If it's not an English-speaking country, they're always going to do their research. And, some negative things came about. But like I always said, in my childhood, when I was younger, living in Nigeria, there were always two positive influences, you could say, that, were always in the media when it comes to African news. And that was Nelson Mandela, and one was Muammar Gaddafi. They both helped the nation in a positive way. You could say, there are negatives about Muammar Gaddafi, and you could say not too many bad things about Mandela, prison sentence, things like that. But those are the two positives I always saw when I was a kid. Mm-hmm. So I was from Africa, so I really didn't have a problem going to play in Africa because I never knew there was a league in that part of the world. So I took it upon myself to go. I always love new experiences. To be honest with you, when I'm 50, I want to tell my kids and my grandkids about the great places I've been. So I took the opportunity. Regardless of what my family said, I went anyway. I always have the last say. But I was pretty much confident about the situation, so I went ahead and went.
And you talked about, obviously, the journey from Macedonia to get into Libya. Mm-hmm. Can you explain to the listeners how long that took?
That was a tough process. It took me a little while. I mean, the day I was supposed to leave Macedonia, it was literally 2 days back to back I think the airport was shut down. The airport was called Alexander, the Great Airport. It was shut down because of fog. So I was like, man, this is a sign. Like, like should I be leaving or should I be going back home to America? Literally, like all flights were shut coming in, going out. So I basically had to get on a train to Greece. I had to go from Macedonia to Thessaloniki, and Thessaloniki to Athens. Spend Christmas Eve and Christmas Day in Athens by myself in a hotel, just hanging out, watching movies, eating kebabs, things like that. Just literally, the city was shut down. I was just by myself. Left there the day after Christmas to had to fly to Jordan. Amman, Jordan. Went to Jordan, had visa issues. So basically, couldn't be in, they wanted me to be in the airport for 2 or 3 days while my visa was being worked on. So I basically was like, just take me to a hotel, anything close. And, they ended up taking me to some rinky-dink shack. Like, it wasn't even a hotel. I mean, it was bad. So I was there, and then my visa finally came in through word of mouth I can't even say the concierge at the hotel. It wasn't concierge. My visa came in, so I ended up flying from Amman, Jordan to Benghazi, Libya, and I didn't really do my research at Benghazi. I did my research on Tripoli, which is a beautiful city. The capital, beautiful. I mean, just gorgeous. So I'm thinking it was going to be similar, second biggest city in the country. I get to Benghazi and it's just desert land, like literally desert. And I'm like, wow, like it's like night and day, these two cities, But when I got there, I kept it positive. I kept it positive. I was here to do a job. I was here to be quiet, put my head down, and do a job, and to win. That was most important. So when I got there, that was my goal.
Okay. And then you talked a little bit of, in the other one, that your experience of when you actually got to Benghazi, you got a soldier came up to you.
Yeah. When I got to Benghazi, I got off the plane and the soldier came up to me with this big gun. Like, I'm like, man. But like we were in line, and he just literally, they were going through the line looking at people's passports, and he just walked up to me and just like, come here, kind of did his hands like that, and I was like, wow, what's going on here? And then he was like, are you Owumi, play for Nasser Benghazi? And I was like, yeah. And he just had this big smile on his face. And I was so relieved. Like, I was getting this VIP treatment, what I mean? I was like, wow. I thought something bad was going to happen. But, actually it was like, he was like a fan. So he takes me through customs, check my passport, takes me downstairs, but all the fans are waiting for me from the team. It was like, it was something literally out of a scene of a movie. Like, everybody's outside waiting for me, shaking my hand. These people bringing me sweets, and but it was actually a great welcome. Like, it was probably the best welcome. I don't want to try to throw any of my other organizations out of the bus, but it was actually like the warmest welcome I've ever seen in my life. More than over 30, 40 people out there greeting me, shaking my hand, giving me, throwing the team's scarves and hats on me, but it was great.
And then something you touched upon in the other podcast, in terms of the working environment you went into, it wasn't something that you were expecting.
No. Well, the environment was very different. The city was, like I said, it was a great city. I don't have, nothing bad to say about it, but I was just used to a certain look of a city. If I'm gonna stay, the street I would stay on, would be paved. There wouldn't be trash out there. So when I went to the city, it was, I was like, kind of had my concerns, like, where was I gonna live? But I pulled up to my street, and it looked a little rugged. I was kind of concerned. But by the time I got upstairs and got to my flat, I was actually happy. I was like, wow. It's probably the best place I've ever stayed in my life, Like, it was like a situation where I wouldn't never want to leave, as far as, like, I could be in there all day, hanging out, watching TV, it was just a nice place. But, I had my doubts, but once I got there, I was good.
Okay. And then for the listeners, can you explain a little bit more about the team and who it was actually run by?
Yeah, the team was run by the infamous dictator Muammar Gaddafi. This was like, when he took over from the king and became this great dictator, he overthrew him in Benghazi, which was his home city, and Nasser was like, the Nasser club was like his club, and they wore the country's colors. We were green. Everything was green. We had the biggest budget. We had the best coaches. They brought in coaches from Europe, from Egypt, the best coaches. We had the best facilities. And the reason why I was brought in because they weren't winning. Like, the year before, I think they won the championship, but recently they had lost 3 straight games in a row. And it was just a bad situation for them. So they brought me in, and then I found out the team was run by the family. And then that's when it started to click about my living situation, the amount of money they were paying people, the pressure they were under. But the family, they were pretty hands-on with the team. Like, the son, one of his sons would show up to our game when we played in the Capitol. I was living in one of his many houses. I think he had 30 houses. Like, the family was so rich. I was living in one of his hideaway flats within the city. But it was a good situation. But it put a lot of pressure on me when I figured it out, though. I'm not going to lie to you. I was a little nervous because, what if we didn't win? What if we lost another 3 games in a row? What would happen? But, it was a challenge I was up for.
And then in terms of, you say the pressures of going on losing streaks, it's probably something you'd attest to, that it's a totally different world to what you were used to in terms of the other organisations and what how would I say this, kind of situations the management put you in, which in the Western world we would probably have problems with.
Yeah, I mean, it was just, I've never had that much pressure on my back. It's like a win right away situation. And then the league I play now, the British Basketball League, you're allowed a certain number of imports. So I'm not gonna say you don't want all the pressure to be on you, but if you have a not so good game, somebody else will pick up the slack. Whereas when I was in Libya, every game you had to be good. There was no time that you couldn't have a bad game. You understand what I'm saying? So, that was something that I was thinking about also. Like, because, sometimes you have off days. Like, it happens. Not only in sport, but in life, you have an off day. But there was just no room for error. And the pressure really taught me a lot about myself, to be honest with you. It taught me that no matter what situation I'm in, I can handle it. And I'm pretty grateful for that situation.
And then, as we progress through this podcast, it's entirely up to you because it's personal to you, the story. You were in Benghazi at the same time as the Arab Spring was kicking off. So if you could talk about some of the trial and tribulations that you went through, obviously go into as much detail as you feel comfortable to do.
Well, that Arab Spring, I look at it as probably one of the most important revolution in my generation. I think it was a revolution of the people, which is good to say. But am I happy that I went through that, or what happened to me? I'm not gonna say I was. Was I put through that test by God? And I said yes. And the reason why I say this is because, I went through a lot of stuff and I learned a lot about myself. Seeing people murdered in front of my own eyes, as a kid, growing up, raised by a great family, you would never think that things like that happen in those parts of the world. You take for granted how good you have it till you've seen something like that. But the most important thing that I always take from the story, and I always want people to understand, was that I seen families destroyed within 5-10 seconds. Just that quick. And a lot of hurt and a lot of pain, not only for me, but the people that were surrounding me in that part of the world, is what I had to take into consideration. Yeah, I had a bad year. I went almost 16, 17 days with limited food, water. At some points, I doubted if I wanted to survive, if I wanted to live. I was born, raised, in the church. I doubted God probably 1,000 times in a 2 week period. Like, how could you let this happen to me? How could you bring me to this part of the world? Not knowing that my whole life, He was preparing me for that moment. And I didn't really figure it out until a year later. When I was a child, all the nasty things that happened in my childhood, all the beatings my brothers gave me, it kind of built me up for literally the Arab Spring. And it was a lot of stuff. It was a lot of stuff. Like I said, seeing people murdered, seeing families destroyed, seeing some of your teammates pass, hearing some of your teammates die because they wanted to go fight in the war. Guys that you had dinner with every night, or you laughed with, or you held their sons in your arms. It was just, my heart just couldn't take none of it. And like I said, I doubted if I want to live at times. But, there was only one thing I could do, after all was over, and even when it was getting worse, I just prayed. It was getting, day by day, it was getting worse. It was getting worse. I didn't see any light at the end of the tunnel, but I just stayed prayed up. But it was emotional is an understatement, to be honest with you, because till this day, people always say, "Oh, you should be fine now," it's over. No, it's never over. Those things will never leave me. That's why I do podcasts, or that's why I speak at universities or schools or at academies, because it's therapeutic for me. People, the way I live my life now, I strategically I always surround myself with people that, will bring positivity to my life. I'm not saying that I'm using them for that, but I know how to gravitate towards positivity, and they know that I need it, so it kind of makes it easy for me to accept my life now. Whereas before I was in denial, like, I'm gonna be better in a week, I could go back to my regular life. And when I started doing that, I was even getting more and more screwed up in my head, and I was literally sinking every day. So I had to literally get help. And I had to accept the fact that, listen, this is what your life is going to be. Those memories will never leave you. You just have to learn how to control them and just take it a day at a time. But the trials and tribulations, like I said, it was horrible. It was horror. Hard. That's the only way I could describe it. I just, like I said, I wish it never happened. If there was another route I could take, I would have, but I know that I went through that because I think God picked me for that. I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy to do that, because you never know what they would try to do, try to literally probably go through with taking their own life. I was almost there, and I stayed strong, and something just told me I was I was on this earth for a certain reason, and I think He picked me for that. Like, out of all these people in the world, He said, "Listen, it's gonna be you. Kid, it's gonna be you. Sorry, but this is the hand that you dealt. You got to figure it out." And I'm grateful. I'm grateful to still be here. I'm grateful that I could use my story as a testimony.
And it's something you attested to on another podcast. How bad did it get at certain stages over that 2 week period?
Well, it was bad. It was bad. Man, I mean, it was the one thing that I always remember that I take for granted. I don't take for granted now is the lack of sleep I got, the lack of rest. I mean, I literally was up at one point for like 48 hours, and like every time I attempted to go to sleep or close my eyes, I could hear a boom or some machine gun going off outside. And it's like every little movement, no matter if somebody just yelled outside, I would just get shaken up, like I was like scared. But it really got bad because, at a certain point I had no food, no water, so I had to improvise. The electricity was off, the plumbing was off, um, no internet, no way for me to contact the outside world. I was literally, drinking from the toilet, rationing the water from the toilet, and I'm a guy who, was raised right, had a good life, and for me to resort to this was kind of crazy, but I had to improvise, But I was down in the dumps. It's probably the worst thing a human being could probably go through and still be alive to tell it. But like I said, I think I guess God felt like I was the perfect person to go through with it. But those are some really bad times. I was looking at my window, seeing buildings go down, seeing buildings bombed, seeing people drag dead bodies, wives drag their husbands from the street, blood everywhere in the road. It was just bad. It was bad. But it's something that I have to talk about. I can, like I said, I can't escape it. People will ask questions and people want to know. But I went through it, so the next man or the next group of people don't have to go through it.
And you say, well, early on in the other podcast that you thought it wasn't going to last as long as it ended up being.
No, I did.
You kind of helped other people within your block. So you gave your last bit of food away because you thought, it's only going to last 2-3 days.
Yeah.
And what was kind of some of the things you used psychologically to keep yourself from obviously going in that downward spiral?
I'm not gonna say I wasn't going in downward spiral. I was heading for the worst. Like I said, I doubted my faith in God all the time, but it's funny that I always continued to pray because that was just what I was taught as a kid. Like I was raised in church, pray no matter what, you get out of it. And it was like I was fighting a battle. Like one of those old cartoons where you have that, angel here and the devil here. That's basically what I was dealing with. Let me pray. Let me, denounce his name, things like that. But that's the only way I could think about it was for me to pray and, just memories of my family, to be honest with you. Like, I didn't want my mother burying me, having to, try to locate her son, on the other side of the world. My nieces, my brothers, my sisters. I come from a huge family where family's all we have. I just know what type of stress it to put on my parents, man, and my family. They kind of helped me and they supported my dream as far as being a professional athlete. And basketball, this round basketball piece of love that took me so far in life. And for it to leave me there and them not seeing me ever again, I think that would have been devastating to them, but, like I said, prayer was the only thing that could help me, even if I didn't make it out, I knew I still would question God and I knew he would give me some answers somehow, just talking to him, asking him why things happen, why this is happening to me. But I feel like it's a struggle that millions of people go through this day, with God and religion. But, I have no regrets about the situation.
And looking at back now, do you kind of think that it shaped you into a better person?
Yeah, I mean, it shaped my life where, I moved strategically and I had to put a lot of my time into bettering myself and bettering other people. Like I said, when it happened, I was only 26 at the time. I was young. I was a kid, But the way I lived my life before that, I wasn't like a reckless child. Like, I wasn't, you say my name in my city or any other city, and people will have nothing but nice things to say about me. But I knew that after all of this happened, in order for me to remain the same way, I had to focus on myself. And it wasn't just going to be like a 1 week, 2 week therapy period. Like, I had to literally work on myself, be alone. I had to learn how to live like a normal person. Just the way the way I talked to people wasn't the same way. When I came back home after everything happened, my friends didn't recognize the type of person I was, and that hurt me. It really hurt me because they thought, I was, basically I was dead on the inside, but I was still, I was still breathing, and it kind of hit me like, I really need to work on myself, and it's not gonna be an easy process. It's still to this day, I still have to work on myself. I still have to get up. I still have to read my Bible. I still have to talk to my parents. I still have to seek therapy, and I'm fine with that. To be honest with you, I have no problem with that. Like I said, that as an athlete, I had to structure my day and what's more important. And I think me bettering myself and trying to be a better person is at the top of the list.
Well, that's definitely a good point for anybody to take. You've gone through that difficult situation in Libya, and it's shaped you into the person you are now. But as you attest to, everybody should always use that form of personal development to make themselves a better person, be that improving the sport, being a better wife, husband,
exactly.
We'll switch on to the kids, taking more onus on doing things in life. Obviously, with this generation now, technology is a massive component and facet of their lives.
Huge.
Go outside. Go out as the younger kids. Go outside and experience what you and me can attest to.
Exactly.
Play outside. The be all and end all is not what's in front of you on a computer screen.
Yeah.
And say that's you've got somebody as a friend in some part of the world that you've never heard of. Go outside and enjoy life. Obviously, kind of use that time when you're young, and go out and try things when you've got. And then obviously, to kind of come to my point with that, so you have no regrets in later life as to why I wish I'd done this, I wish I'd done that.
Exactly,
if you go out and do it, you can look back at your life later on. I've done everything that I wanted to in life. I've done as well as I could have, and you can be happy that you've accomplished what you set out to. Whereas you don't want to come to that point in life and say, "Oh, I wish I'd done that. I wish I'd visited such and such," and you kind of have that regret. And by that stage in life, there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah. No, you're right. That's the absolute truth. That's the way I live my life, to be honest with you. I like the hand I was dealt. At one point in my life when I was going through this, I was mad about the hand I was dealt. I had no choice but to. But now as I look back, I'm happy the route I took. I'm happy that God put me here with the parents that brought me into this world, the brothers and sisters that He surrounded me with. But I have a great profession. I have great people around me. I live a good life. I live a very good life. I mean, I'm not the richest person in the world. I'm not Bill Gates. I'm not LeBron James. I'm not, Mo Farah. I'm not none of these people. But I live a very good life. I have a lot of love around me. A lot of love. And you can't buy that. So I'm happy.
But it's something you'd attest to. The only difference between you and the three people is probably money, but at the epicenter of all that, which makes all four of you have similar goals, is obviously you have a passion for whatever that you do, and that's why you took upon it yourself to do it.
Yeah, which is what a lot of athletes in my position don't understand. Just because you're not making the 10 to 15 million dollars a year on the high level, they say, "Oh, my life is not as good. My career is not as good." We all have the same passion. We all get up and we put in the same amount of hours. It's just they were dealt a different hand. How are you gonna play the hand the cards that you dealt? You can actually fold them, or you could use them the best way they could work for you. And that's exactly what I did. And that's what a lot of people need to understand. Everybody could do the same thing. If you want to be whatever you want to be, you get dealt a certain hand, and you got to prepare your life, prepare yourself, do the research, study, do the work. You got to put in the work.
Well, something you'd probably attest to. It's from an athlete perspective. It's coming back to the root form of the sport.
Mm-hmm.
Why did you get into it? You obviously enjoy it. You like this. You've got a love for the game, and the one thing that you could probably take from it is when it gets up to that certain point in time where you don't enjoy it, you don't like to get up and do the training. That's the time where you say enough is enough and I need to retire. But until that point, you kind of got to remember what it was like to be a kid, because it's questions I get asked is why did you do sport, and why did you want to get to that certain level? Well, to kind of put it in simple terms, obviously the ones that get to a higher level have worked on that skill set, have the talent to be able to progress, but they haven't lost what the emphasis of sport is that enjoyment. And as long as you have that, how would I put it, sense of enjoying what you do, you'll carry on doing that. And like I said, until you reach that certain point where you don't want to do it anymore, it only comes to that point is when you say, I need to call time on this part of my life and move on to that next chapter in life, whatever that may be. Obviously, it's probably a good one, obviously, with the scholarship system the Americans have. You use your sport to progress your education and to be able to get something that in the long run will be your future career. Whereas I think it's probably a big one in the UK, obviously with the sporting academies. They're brought in as young as 4 or 5 years old, and the lucky ones, that's all they do throughout their career.
Yeah.
And as a psychologist would put it, that's their identity. They're known as a professional athlete, whereas they can kind of go off the rails when they finish because, this is all I've ever known. What do I do now? Whereas a person that has gone on to use their sport and been able to improve themselves on a personal level, be that further education or some kind of way in which they've got an outlook on life as to obviously they look at it from a bigger picture in terms of I could get hypothetically an injury tomorrow and my athletic career is finished, so what do I do to look after myself in the long run to have something as a backup if that situation happened to arise in the short-term period? Or what would I like to do in the long run? Like you say, with journalism, that's a passion you have. You've kind of got something to look forward to. Well, in the short term, you do it now. You'll use it as time to probably a form of relaxation. It's your time away from the sport to kind of, as I would put it, a form of distraction, but it kind of allows you to wind down and kind of put basketball to one side and not be as those ones that are involved in sport and that's all they know. They're kind of 100% of the time, this, I'm focused on this 24 hours a day, and okay, in the long run that's not good for you psychologically, because you're going to become obsessed with the things, and obviously that's going to impact on other facets of your being. So you're going to have problems with relationships, be it possibly with your family, girlfriends, wives, because you're stuck in that mindset of probably being very, very, well, athletes are very self-centered and quite narrow-minded at the best of times. It's probably one of those, you could probably look at it from a positive and a negative way. Positive, that's probably how they become so successful down the line, because they are so focused and driven on, I want to do this to get me to there. But then on the negative side of it, they kind of put other stresses on their family, because be it or to progress through basketball, for example, is not a cheap sport to do, because obviously in America you've got obviously your YMCA teams, AAU, and obviously as you and then obviously the other commitments as you progress through your school, obviously high school, it becomes a little bit of a chore to a certain extent for the parents, and obviously with that time management issue, you've got all these teams that you're a member of, so you could be, say for example, maybe playing Friday night, Saturday and Sunday, and then have to go back to school and start it all over again. So it's that element of teaching people, you've got to be very wise with your time, and not. I think where from a psychological perspective, the ones that do better have got something. They've got kind of either two strings to their bow, in terms of they've got that education to fall back on, but then it's kind of a reprieve from the sport in an essence, that if you have a bad game, you kind of forget this for a few hours and focus on coursework and because this needs to be done, and it kind of enables you to kind of wind down from that situation and say, well, okay, I've had a bad game here. It's not the end of the world in the grander scheme of things, and looking to learn from it, but kind of this needs to be done, and you kind of shift the focus, as I would say, to that, and I'll look at that in team meetings as to what particularly went wrong in that game, instead of dwelling on it, which would be the case if somebody's only focused on that, which would obviously could go. Well, it's only a negative spiral, because you're going to look at it from. You'll dwell on it too much. Well, I did this; it was the wrong decision. So you'll change your game entirely to suit what you did wrong, as opposed to kind of putting it to one side and focusing on something else, and then looking back on it and looking at it from a more critical way of thinking, and being a little bit more reflective, and saying, well, I did this, I could have done that, but those are what ifs, and not dwelling on the fact that that moment in time that you did something wrong is going to impact majorly on the outcome of the game. It's little facets throughout the game. It won't solely be you as to why. You look at it both ways. Either what you won a game or you lost the game is solely on you. Obviously, at that particular moment, you're going to not be happy with yourself because, obviously, with any competitive person, you don't like losing, be it in sport, in life, and it's one of those, and it's to kind of say it's probably, would that be something that you would agree with?
Yeah. No, you make a good point. You make a good point. I mean, I think all athletes agree with it. I think not a lot of people understand it because I'm not gonna say they don't want to put in the work. I just think that only a special group of people could understand it. You understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So you have to be a special, like you have to have a different type of mindset to be able to grasp that. But I think, it's something that needs to be talked about a lot more, so I understand you.
So I think we'll wrap it up there, Alex. So thanks once again for coming on the show.
No problem. And I want to mention also that I have a new book out called The Fire Raven. Came out a couple weeks ago. It's a fiction, and I think people will love it. The main character is a female. She's a female assassin, but it's catered more around my time in England. It's fiction, but there are a lot of things that I've taken from my 5 years here that are within the story. And it's actually getting received very well from a lot of people, a lot of British Basketball League fans, and just people in general. So I just wanted to highlight that also.
Okay, and then my final point would be, if anybody wanted to get in touch with you via social media to ask you possibly a question about your new book or the Gaddafi's point guard, what would be the best way for them to get in touch with you?
That's easy. You can find me on Twitter at Alex Owumi, AlexOwumi. The same thing for Instagram and the same thing for Facebook. Everything is just my name, my first and last name. So that's pretty easy. And I love when people hit me up on social media because I'm very personal. I love to answer people's questions. I just, I take pride in the fact that, the people that support me, people I focus on basically all the time. I like to have a good relationship with them. Tell me what you didn't like about the book, what you did like. Just talk. I literally spend half my day multitasking. I'm always on my phone talking to people personally. People always refer other people to my work, and they always contact me. And I just like to be personal with the people that support me and my fans. So make sure you contact me on any one of my social medias, and I'll respond. It's not somebody else responding for me. It's me.
So once again, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you, James. I appreciate it.
If you wanted some bonus content, I have now set up a Facebook group where you can interact with both the guests and I. The name of this so-called group is Mindset Game. So why not come over and check it out for yourself? And before I forget, I would really appreciate it if you would be so kind as to leave a short written review, as it helps to get the podcast more notoriety and it would be more visible in future to others, and thus helping more people, which my guests and I are all about. Once again, thanks for listening, and I'll catch you next time for another episode of the Mindset Game podcast.